Hi everyone, welcome and welcome back. This is the start of another reading vlog. So for the month of September, my Pick My Next, which is a video series that I complete every month where I give a selection of books and you get to pick one for me to read and review. And in September, we're going back a little bit in time here. In September, the Pick My Next was for novellas. Now, I don't read a ton of novellas. I have read a couple, but generally I don't go out of my way to read novellas unless it's a particularly hyped one that is by an author that I enjoy reading from. But I went with novellas because I was going to be bringing home a newborn, or I knew that I would have a newborn in that month. So I thought novellas would be easy for me to consume. And with this series, I always read and review it. But here's the thing with novellas. Kind of tough to review without saying too much or spoiling too much. So I thought rather than just review the winner for that month for the Pick My Next, I would actually read and tell you about all of the novellas that I read to determine whether or not I am a novella reader. Now, I feel like novellas are a tough sell in fantasy. People generally come to fantasy for the world building or escapism or unique magic systems, and tough to do all of those things well in a short time frame or a short page count that you get with a novella. So I thought, why not try out all of these novellas that I already pre-selected for myself, find out if I am a novella reader, and if so, what kind of novellas do I like? So the 5 books that were included for this Pick My Next were All Systems Red by Martha Wells, and that was the winner for September. I have already read that one because I read it and finished it and was like, okay, how do I review this single tiny novella? So I'll tell you about that one in a moment. And then the other 4 novellas were a mix of backlist and new releases. So the other ones included Ogres, The Lies of the Ajungo, A Deadgin in Cairo, and Untethered Skies. But from here, let's jump into my thoughts on All Systems Red by Martha Wells. I'm going to sway a little bit because of what I've got going on here, so I apologize if that's super distracting. What did I think of Murderbot, or the first Murderbot novella? So this is a very, very beloved, very hyped series of novellas. There are, I think, at least one, if not more, full-length novels in the series as well. And we are following an AI, an artificial intelligence unit, who calls himself Murderbot. And they're sort of like a security guard, from what I can gather, but like a really fancy security guard AI person or thing. And they have hacked their own system so that they can sort of, make choices on their own while still pretending to be not their own entity. And that is kind of like what I knew going into Murderbot, or going into the first one. I'm going to use Murderbot just interchangeably here for All Systems Red, which is the title of just the first one. So I did really enjoy it. I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by a man, and Murderbot is non-binary, I guess, and they refer to themselves as they. So I don't know that colored my opinion or my impression of Murderbot, but that is something to note if you are curious. So outside of what I knew going into this, I will just add a little bit of plot sort of stuff here without saying too much, in that we're following Murderbot, who has been sort of like loaned out or hired. They work for an agency, or they're owned, controlled by, manufactured by, however you want to put it, by this particular agency, and they have been, loaned out or ordered or whatever for a particular mission. And in that mission, they get swept up into some of the stuff that's going on for the humans that they are working for in that moment. I did really enjoy the novella. I don't think the sci-fi elements were too in-depth, but I also did not super follow all of the nitty-gritty details of like what was in the system and updates and all of that. I don't know how to explain it, but I didn't really follow all of the software elements, let's say, that were casually discussed, but did play a part of the, did play a role in the plot itself. I think I mentioned this in my wrap-up for the month of September, but I think actually my favorite kind of moment or part of the novella itself was when it was ending, where it left off left me kind of intrigued to see where we're going to go from here in the future. So if that was a single entity novella on itself and that was the ending, I would be both, like, I loved the ending, but I would also hate it for not telling us more about Murderbot and where they leave off in this story. But overall, I just think it was fine, or that it was really good, but it wasn't like, oh my god, rave reviews, this is the best thing I've ever read, Murderbot is my new favorite character of all time. I think that there are a lot of readers who really, really love Murderbot as a character, and perhaps the shenanigans or whatever they get into in this series. But I think that that's like the most important key thing, is that it's not just a solo novella, it is a series of novellas. And I think that that's what saves this for me in terms of like leaving me open to not being super like, yeah, okay, check, I've read Murderbot, is that there is more out there on this character. Because I think that the author did a really good job of bringing up certain ideas, elements with humanity and artificial intelligence and that kind of a thing. And I don't think if it was just this novella, Murderbot wouldn't have totally, it wouldn't be a new favorite character for me. But I think that when people talk about how much they love Murderbot, I generally think it's looking at the series at large, or at least that's what I'm assuming. I'm sure that there are people who read this single novella and that's what won Murderbot over them. Obviously, it was successful and people continue to read on in the series. But if it was just this, or like just this alone, I'm not totally like, Murderbot's the best thing ever. So that's where I'm at with Murderbot. I liked it. I liked Murderbot. I'm intrigued by some of the discussions that were brought up, and it's maybe a discussion about artificial intelligence and humanity and what makes someone human or whatever. I think it's maybe the better version of that I have read, but I haven't read a lot of those. So those are my thoughts on Murderbot, or All Systems Read by Martha Wells, and I will continue to read on the other novellas and see what I think of them. Whoa, okay. Last night I finished The Lies of the Ajungo, and it had a crazy ending that honestly I did not see coming. Really, really dramatic ending for like to read in the middle of the night. I am getting in some morning snuggles with my first big baby here while my other baby is out for a walk with their grandma. So I thought I would quick pop on. Overall, I did like it. I feel like the ending really, really amped up the memorableness for this novella. This is the one, it is a new release from earlier this year, really, really early in the year. So the setup for this novella is that it takes place in this city, like desert place, where it stopped raining. They have no water. They made a deal with the neighboring city, the Ajungo, to provide them with water. And in exchange, for some reason, the Ajungo make it so, or decree, that everyone at the time has to like lose their tongues, and then whenever children turn 13, that's the age at which they too lose their tongue. And some kids in the city before turning 13 leave the city in order to try to find water. And that's what happens with our main character. His mom is like dying from dehydration, essentially. I think there was another term that they used for it. So he goes off right before his 13th birthday into the desert to try to find some source of water or some other place who can help them. And it goes through the year after that as he sort of like makes some discoveries about what's going on here. The narrative voice was really unique. It did have like a slight distant feel to it that I think character readers or character forward readers might not struggle with, but it might not grip them. It's not really about the characters here, the character development. It's more about like the manipulation of truth and fact and history here. And it's about oppression as well, let's say that. I don't want to give too much away because obviously with these novellas it's so tough to say like anything about what it's about or what happens without giving the whole story away. Isn't she the cutest? I do think that it dragged a little bit in the middle, which is kind of crazy to say for a short novella. But there was some character stuff going on in the middle that I just found a little bit slow. Not as exciting. And if you're really into magic systems, you might be troubled by some quick magic stuff. I don't really read for magic systems, so I didn't need it to make sense, but I will say that this one kind of came in kind of late in the story and was just kind of like, here, this is what it is, without really any, with even too little description for me, I would say. So just that didn't totally work for me, along with sort of the character stuff in the middle. It was also more graphic than I was expecting. I really did not expect this to have some of the graphic elements to it. I guess I should have, from the whole tongue cutting out thing. But there's some, it goes into some detail on some stuff. Overall, I enjoyed it. I do think it's a good novella, although I will say that I think that the ending like really makes this a much more memorable novella than everything that happened before it. Like definitely it was good, and it was I think a memorable story. I think it did what it wanted to do in like thematically, and what it was exploring and what it was giving to the reader. But that ending just like really knocks it over to be like, whoa, I'm gonna remember that. So that was The Lies of the Ajungo. I think I'm gonna pick up A Dead Djinn in Cairo next. It's a super short audiobook that I have on Scribd. So I think that's where I'm going to go next. We'll see. I'm on a bit of an audiobook kick at the moment. Okay, I finished A Dead Djinn in Cairo by P. Djeli Clark last night. It was, I think, 1 hour audiobook, so it was super easy to listen to over the course of the night. And it was not what I expected. So you can't get too nitty gritty in an hour-long novella in terms of like depth and intensity here. But I like, our investor, I like our detective character Fatima, who we were introduced to. I had heard, or I thought at least, or it was pitched as like a buddy detective kind of thing, where in this one we're getting introduced to a partner. And the partner is not someone associated with the, for lack of a better word or terminology that I have already forgotten, police department. So I think, though, it is the partner that the rest of the series follows, in that it follows the partnership, and I think perhaps sapphic relationship as well. But for such a quick novella, I really appreciate the amount of world building that happened, where we have this world where at some point in the past, in the near past for when this is happening, which I want to say is like the 20s. Again, I have forgotten already. Please remember that I'm listening to these in the middle of the night. There was someone who like kind of found a way to like break the veil between worlds. Again, not the terminology that was used in the novella. And other beings like jinn, etc., entered this world or our world, and so it's an like alternate history where Cairo has become sort of an epicenter. And at the beginning of this, there's a dead djinn. The story goes from there. Again, it's an hour, so I can't really say anything other than that to give away the plot. I don't know if an hour-long novella is for me. It was rather quick. I like it in the idea that it's like starting off like an ongoing series where we're just like getting to know this character, and then we'll get to know more, hopefully, in other novellas and in the full-length novel. I think in a similar way that I felt about Murderbot, where I was intrigued. Like, I liked the introduction to the character of Murderbot. I like the introduction to the character of Fatima, but I hope that there is more, and I like that I like that there is more coming from those characters, because it wasn't enough in that one novella for either of them. The investigation itself, I think, like went rather quick, but again, it's an hour-long novella audiobook, so I think it didn't linger anywhere in particular. So that is, I think, 3 novellas down, 2 to go, still Ogres and Untethered Skies. I'm going to listen to Untethered Skies next, because that one is audiobook, whereas Ogres, I do have to read the ebook. And at the moment, I'm on a bit of an audiobook kick. Although, I do have an audiobook. I have both an audiobook and an ebook going on outside of this novella project. You know what? Let's say Untethered Skies, and that could change. Okay, I switched it up because I finished my ebook, and I did still have another audiobook on the go. So instead of reading Untethered Skies next, I read Ogres by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I did finish it yesterday or the day before, but this is just yesterday. This is the first time I've had to sit down and tell you about it since then. And it was so good. How have you not read Ogres yet? You have to go pick it up. It was so good. I do think that the synopsis on the back of the book, or like the synopsis, doesn't give it a good shot, or like it doesn't make it seem as interesting and cool as it is going to, or as it is. So Ogres is about this guy, a young guy, like 18-ish, and he lives in a small village that is like part of the vast land holdings of this ogre family. And the ogre goes around and, picks up his, forgetting the word, essentially taxes, but like the tithe sort of thing every season or every year, whatever. And in one particular one, this ogre brings the ogre's son, and he was bad-mouthing our main character, Torkel, and Torkel ends up assaulting, and then perhaps more, this ogre's son. And that's a big no-no, because the humans in this world are dirt under the ogre's feet, kind of a setup. And that kicks off a whole series of events in Torkel's life that are being narrated to you or told to you by a second-person perspective. So it's all you, Torkel did this, etc., etc., etc. Don't let the second-person perspective thing turn you off. I actually really like second-person perspective when it's done well. The only other example that I can think of off the top of my head is Harrow the Ninth, which was done so intentionally, and when you get it, it just makes it so good. And the exact same thing, when you realize at the end, or when it's revealed at the end why it is second-person perspective, it just is so good. Absolutely, by far. Like, I honestly don't think Untethered Skies is going to beat this one for me in terms of favorite. It could, I guess, that's a possibility, but just, that was so good. Absolutely, it's the favorite novella that I've read by far in this little novella experiment. So kudos to Sarah from Bright and Bookish for turning me on to this book. So good. So good. I wish that I was good at talking about theme when books like this come across, where it's like so clearly like that's kind of what it's about. Like it's more thematic than like plot or anything, or to some extent character driven. I guess we're following Torkel's life, but we're seeing it through the eyes of someone else. Yeah. But and I can't even hint at kind of like what the overarching theme is, I think, because I feel like that's part of what you slowly discover. And essentially, Torkel's perspective is this small village in this ogre lord's land holdings. And as his story progresses, the world expands so much. And it was such good world building in terms of like, as it slowly opened up and you begin to get a sense of what's going on, and you're seeing it through Torkel's eyes to some extent, okay? Because it's like, you, Torkel, notice this about the world, whatever. You understand second person perspective. I don't know why I keep reiterating that. But you are seeing the world through Torkel's limited small town village kind of eyes. So as the world expands and develops, you have this like sense of the naivety sort of and ignorance of Torkel as you start to put the pieces together. You, the reader, start to put the pieces together of what's going on. And there was a couple twists or like reveals within this novella that honestly just like, one I had kind of figured out. The second one I totally didn't see coming. But yeah, it was so good. I absolutely loved this novella. First Adrian Tchaikovsky book that I've ever read, so swinging a hit for sure, home run on that. Cannot wait to explore other books of his. The local book club that I theoretically attend but haven't attended in like a year is reading his newest book. Or actually, I don't know if it's his newest book. City of Lost Chances came out at the end of last year, so it's not that new. But anyway, City of Lost Chances, they're reading it this year or this month, but I think the meeting is like next week, and I absolutely don't have time to read that book by then. So, and I know Sarah DNF'd that one, so maybe it's not the next one to read. What Adrian Tchaikovsky book should I pick up next? I know everyone loves the Guns of the Dawn, that one. But if there's another one you think I should try, maybe something shorter as well, hit me up, because that was amazing and I absolutely want to read more like that. Okay, fifth, I think, and final novella now we have is Untethered Skies, so I will be picking up that next. And I am almost done my current audiobook, so that'll be perfect to pick up after I'm done that. Okay, I'm back. So I finished Untethered Skies a couple days ago. I listened to the audiobook. I think it was about 3 hours, and I was able to listen to it here and there. And this is just the first time I've had to sit down and talk to you about it. Good girl. So I really, really liked it. I feel like the very last line of the book left me really sad in a way that I wasn't sure that that's how I wanted it to end, but I think that it was the way that it needed to end based on what the whole book was exploring, which was this idea of being bonded to an animal who doesn't really care about you. Like, it's not like that kind of animal companion where you're bonded and it cares about you. It's attached to you as well. This is a kind of tethered wild animal who keeps going back because you're feeding it and you make it worth it for them. It did veer away from that theme more than I was expecting throughout the middle of the novella. So I was glad that it did then circle back to that, because at first I was like, well, this isn't how this novella was described. It was a little bit more like in the inner politics, the inner workings kind of this group of manticore hunters, these rock hunters. But overall, I think it did a pretty good job of not only exploring that theme, but also giving you a good kind of progression, overview of time as our main character goes through the course of, or over a period of time of them being a rock hunter. And it had this kind of snapshot quality to certain friend groups and how dynamics within workplaces change with people who come and go, or as situations change. It gave you that very realistic progression of time passing and how that can affect interpersonal dynamics in a very short novella. So yeah, I think it did a really, really good job. I actually really liked it. I feel like the reviews were so mediocre on it that I think people's expectations were really high. So I went in with very lukewarm expectations. I was not expecting Jade City, but with giant birds. So I think that I liked it more. But again, the ending was kind of oh. And really, I wasn't sure where the ending was going to go. As that scene was progressing, I think there's a lot of different ways that it could have gone. I think there's a lot of different ways that she could have ended it to make it very common, in the sense that fantasy readers, how they expected maybe where it could go. If you read a lot of fantasy books, you could have predicted a route that this would have taken through the ending, and she veered off of that. So I think that was pretty good. It was, I think, maybe one of the novellas in this novella reading project here, that I think left me the most satisfied with like what it provided in the time that it had. I think it did a good job of that. Like I didn't need more of this story. I was actually very satisfied with the amount of story that I got here. So that brings me to the end of this novella exploration project. In order of how I liked them, definitely ogres at the top. I have to remember, probably Untethered Skies next, and then The Lies of a Jungo, and then I think Murderbot. But no, maybe Murderbot higher than Lies of a Jungo. Those two are tough. And then I think a Dungeon in Cairo is probably the last, where I was kind of like, that was fun, but it was like a chapter. And didn't leave me with much, or it didn't give me much. Although one where, again, like with Murderbot, where I'm like, I would like to see more of that character, and I'm glad that more exists with that character. I didn't hate any of them. There were no duds. I think I had some like pretty good shocks and surprises overall, like a couple of them there, especially The Lies of a Jungo, Ogres, left me with some like kind of gasping, surprised moments that they had those reveals or took those turns in the book that they did. I think this left me more open to reading novellas, definitely. But I do think it's such a skill, I think, from authors to do it well. So I'm definitely gonna look out for more like novellas that have really, really good reviews, in the sense that like it's a complete story that you like feel really good about. And I feel like the ones that like left me with shocking moments, I think kind of ones like that. So I think I have a better sense of what I'm looking for out of a novella. And maybe the continuation of the Murderbot series changes my mind on that. As I said, I am going to keep reading on, like further novellas in that story. And that's one with both Murderbot and Dejit in Cairo both have other novellas and full-length novels in that same world, like with those characters, I believe. So that'll be an interesting comparison to see, you know, how that goes. There's a difference in reviews, I think, of those. But no, overall, I'm glad that I ended up reading all of the novellas, because I was really curious about all of them. And as I've said, I haven't read a ton of novellas before in the past. So I think this was a good experience for me, to, especially right now, you kind of have that sense of completeness and over a short period of time, which is the amount of time that I have right now. I definitely liked doing this more like theme-related project style vlog, so maybe I will do some more in the future, come up with other ideas. I definitely have some other ideas of things like this that I could do. Do you want more lifestyle, what I'm up to right now, which is just really just like hanging out with my baby and my dog? So if you want to see some more of that, let me know, and I can include more life stuff as well in these if you're interested. I can also keep it strictly books. But that was my exploration with novellas. I definitely think that it was good. It was good. I enjoyed the majority of the novellas that I read. I really, really liked some of them. New favorite, Ogres, is absolutely a favorite for the year, I think. So that's exciting to have found that. What do you guys think about novellas? Are you novella readers? Not so much? Open to it? Do you have a favorite novella? Let me know down below, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye.